There are spoilers in this video, but like, does anybody even care? Hello to my 50 subscribers and everybody else who is here because they hated the show. Never have I ever by Mindy Kaling and Lang Fisher as much as I hated the show. This video is clearly very off-brand for me because I usually just post food and travel vlogs, but seeing the show over the past 2 days, I just feel all this cringe in me, and as if I've been mocked by a show that was supposed to be this pinnacle for South Asian representation on an international platform like Netflix, and made by these amazing people like Mindy Kaling and Lang Fisher, who I really, really appreciate both of them. But when the show came out, I was just shocked. Like, what is this? Why does this exist? And why did you make it? I was beyond excited for this show because last year, I remember around summer of 2019, one of the South Asian pages that I follow had this post from Mindy Kaling about them doing auditions for this new show for Netflix where they'll be casting these 3 leads. And let me tell you how excited I was. I actually auditioned for a role of Kamala. Like this thing you see here, this picture right here where that email, that's the confirmation. I actually applied for that role. So of course I was very excited. I wanted to be just part of this thing, which I thought would be like new, maybe Crazy Rich Asians or new Always Be My Maybe, which was just amazing in my opinion. There were just great storylines right there. Representation, great or not, that is up to people of those communities to decide. But storyline itself was amazing. And that is something this show clearly lacked. For those who are still not scarred by this show, let me tell you about it. This follows the life of Indian American teenager Devi, who lives with her single mom Nalini, and this foreign student, her cousin from back home, that is mainland India. What's her name? Kamala. Okay, I hate that character so much, so it's okay if I forget her name. But it's Kamala, and I think the setting of the show, along with 3 South Asian women in lead, along with the narrator, gives a lot of Jane the Virgin vibes. By the way, Jane the Virgin, which is like the most amazing show on the planet, and then this show is literally the opposite of it. Right off the bat, it's a cringe teenage comedy show. And I watch all kind of cringe TV shows on Netflix, like literally all the shit, especially since I've been in quarantine. So I thought like, yeah, why not another one? They say the word sex like a million times, but I'm like, sure, that's high school for every one of us. Like, you know, we think that everybody out there is doing sex except you, which is not really true. I'm really hoping that that's what everybody else thought, but yes. So I was like, sure, I'm gonna give it a try for 2 reasons. Number 1, South Asian representation. I'm here to support it in any way possible. Giving it a million views, I would do that. Second, the guy in the trailer, Paxton Yoshida Hall, aka Darren Burnett, is currently the hottest man walking the face of this earth, in my opinion. So, Noah Centineo, take a side. We have a new teenage heartthrob that we are looking for at #thirsty quarantine. Okay, all that aside, let's talk about the problems with this cringe fest. Number 1, and the biggest problem, Kamala and her accent. I honestly hate the whole character of Kamala. I really wish they would have taken me at the audition so that I can just like tear the script down. But this is what they wrote in the casting description. Kamala, female, 20s, South Asian, speaks with an Indian accent. So when I read that, I thought they would be just like more coherent and more emphasize on words, and well, speak a bit of British English. Like that's the difference between Indian English versus American English. And while I've been in this country for a few years now, I have stripped off most of the, I think, Indian English accent, but I do meet international students from India who are like, what do you call, fresh off the boing, and honestly, it doesn't take a long time for them to adapt. The only difference between Indian English and American English, a big one is like Indians speak British English because that's what we are taught as part of our course. But at the same time, we all grew up, at least the urban Indian kids, we all grew up watching Hollywood movies and Hollywood TV shows all the time. So it's not like the biggest problem for us to adapt. But only fresh off the bat, like the biggest difference would be like, the way I say like, or biggest difference. So we just speak all the words very, very coherently. That is a pretty huge difference between the accents. But what Kamala is doing in the show is Appu accent. Are we allowed to say dick now? Oh my god, why? Why? Why did you have to do that? Accent was very fake. It's like you're mocking your mainland counterparts, and that is not okay. Sure, accents, people do fake accents all the time, and it's okay to mock, but this show was not supposed to be a mockery of another culture. It, it's like you're appropriating your own culture. Like, what the hell was that? Especially, I think one of the episodes had like Kamala and her potential fiance and this another uncle, and just hearing them talk with so much fake accent was just like my ears were bleeding. I personally faced this issue where a lot of people that I met freshman year in college, especially Indian Americans, they would kind of mock my accent. But it's one thing to, I think, mock at a personal level and like just point out like, haha, you say it differently. And that's okay. Accents are not a bad thing. It is what it is, right? But then that's another thing to like have an entire show and just make them speak on consistent, just make them speak on a loop. So yeah, Kamala's accent, I think everybody was pissed by it. I got so many DMs because earlier I had posted on my Instagram, I remember that like, oh my god, the show is finally out. I'm so excited by it. And I'm watching it like, and it started off like pretty okay. But then when I started watching like the first episode itself, I was just like, what's going on? What's going on? Everybody else from back home in India, they just messaged me like, okay, we hate this show. Like, what is going on here? It's like white people made a show about us and white people casted more white people to talk like us. It was Apu from Simpsons all over again. And that is bad. That's really, really bad. Please stop doing it and actually meet Indian international students or South Asian international students from abroad. Believe me, we do try to adapt and assimilate a lot more than you would expect us to do. Aside from Kamala's accent, her character is about being this perfect Indian daughter. She is like beautiful, she's dutiful, she's humble, she prays, she cooks so well, and she is soon going to be in part of an arranged marriage. So, Kamala's mom, it's not Kamala's mom, Devi's mom loves her. So I think they are trying to kind of show the contrast there between Devi and what Devi is expected to be by cultural standard. But Kamala's turning point is that she's actually a rebel in her own way because she's dating out of her culture. She's dating this guy called Steve. By the way, shout out to Eddie Liu for performing. I've seen Eddie Liu perform before as part of Artist Touch Play, which is an Asian American theater company. So it was like great to see like, oh, there's a familiar face out there. And also I think this is the only point where the showmakers did a good job, because a lot of times biracial relationships would always be a person of color and a white person. And I'm like, biracial relationships are literally people of any two races or any two ethnicities for starters. So good thing that at least they kind of explored this idea of biracial relationship, and they were showing that even on surface when Kamala is like so perfect and everything, she's rebelling in her own way. And at one point she did calls it off with Steve, but like then she watches Riverdale, gets excited by the idea of like somebody dating somebody, the guy from the other side of the tracks. So she's like, I'm gonna rebel, I'm gonna fight for us and all those things. So it continues, but until on the day when she meets her potential fiance, who turns out to be this another hot Indian dude, or a lot of hot Asian men in this show. So she sees him and she's like, okay, bye, Steve. Okay. What the hell? Like, keeping the Indian part aside, as a woman, what the hell? What the hell did Steve do? You were literally going to meet him after the lunch with a potential fiance. What happened there? you're going to fight for him. What just happened just because the potential fiance is hot, you're like, okay, peace out, bro. Like, no wonder I get so many questions on arranged marriage, because it kind of made it seem like every other relationship outside of what the parents expected them to do were just a joke to like Indian girls in general. And that is stupid. I see so many people here like who are pursuing the biracial relationships. Sure, it's hard, it's a fight, and I'm not shitting on arranged marriage. A lot of people do it. Within the community, we always joke about like how that is a great backup plan. That your parents are gonna find somebody like suitable and like the most eligible bachelor of Silicon Valley. Yeah, that is great. Sure, why not? But that also doesn't mean that she is just shown to like treat everything else as a joke. For Steve, like she was with him till the night before, and now suddenly he's like woof out. So I do not know what was the purpose of that particular thing. If there was not personality development at all, rather it was the other way around. She just went back to like, okay, I'll just do what my parents asked me to do, and just treat the other guy as a big joke. That was a great storyline for sure. Moving forward, Devi. Straight up, a very shitty character, but then I don't think we were supposed to like her. Like, I'm not a film major, I'm just like ranting here, but it seems like she has had like some terrible events in her background, but there's a point to which it should stop justifying her actions in the show, and I clearly did not find any point. She was shitty from the beginning all the way to the end. Okay, if there's one thing I liked about the Devi character, was that they decided to cast somebody who was not just pale, because it's a very common practice amongst even Bollywood movies or just Asian movies in general to always cast like pale actors in like big cinema. For example, I think this was a big critique even for Crazy Rich Asians, where there was like, oh, why are there just like pale Chinese people in there? So I'm glad they casted somebody with more ethnic features and just showing like, hey, there's a diversity between the same community. But apart from that, what the hell again? So she was stereotyped to be the Indian American kids who hate their culture. Now, I'm not Indian American because like I wasn't born and brought up here, so maybe it's not my place to say, but I went to college with a lot of them, especially a lot of those Indian Americans who were self-proclaimed whitewashed people, and even they do not shit on their own culture. Sure, they would just like not attend all the festivals, or they would not attend the pujas and would make fun of the toxic auntie culture, like, but which Indian doesn't, honestly? And how just uncomfortable Indian clothes are. Sure, we all hate that. We all mock about it, and that's okay. That's for us to mock about. But they do not just shit on their culture, like, I hate to be Indian or something like that. And leave that aside, she only felt happy in her Indian clothes when a guy validated her looks. So, again, as a female, what a shitty character. Like, why? So, like, we are not happy until what we are doing is validated by a guy we like. And talking about that guy, or any guy you like, I don't think any guy ever in my head would ever flirt with me like, you have the looks of Priyanka Chopra. Ew. This is what I want to say once again. Stop stereotyping your own culture. It's like you're literally appropriating your own culture. You wear your clothes you wear your traditional clothes a few times a year. You eat Indian food or whatsoever, but then you're mocking every other cultural aspect of it. The principles, the morals. I think that is what the show is lacking. Like, they just use like these little things, like the food, the dresses, even the ethnic blankets, but then they miss out the principles and the kind of relationships that exist in South Asian families or just families in general. I watch so many of these ethnic family shows. There's Kim's Convenience, there's a Jane the Virgin, there is a One Day at a Time. You know what makes those shows great? Even though I'm not much familiar with the Korean culture, with the Puerto Rican culture or Cuban culture, but it's a great storyline. Okay, it's just amazing character development. So I've tore up so many times watching those shows and the relationships, especially between the female characters. And there are so many amazing female characters in this show, or they could have been amazing rather. And then they have also shown the mothers of all three friends of Devi, but none of that was a positive. Like there was not one positive, just inter-female relationships. So it was just very sad to see. And I'm like, it's just been very regressing. It's like just women just hate on each other or they just don't get along just because they are different in their own ways. No, even when they're different, we do find common ground to get along. We are not always just fighting. So I guess as a feminist, this show is a big step back. And that is something that annoys the hell out of me. In summary, the show did a horrible job of representing the South Asian culture, even though they were trying to go for these three different kind of spaces amongst the South Asians in America. Then it did a bad job of showing relationships amongst females and just like no positive, I think, feminine energy in general. Not a lot of it, like very less, I guess. I guess the therapist was my favorite female character in the whole show, maybe. And finally, and most importantly, I have a proposal. Because I saw that they kind of left the show at a point where there's space for them to make a second season. Don't do it, please. But I do propose a spin-off. That is to take these three amazingly attractive Asian men. Like, wow, look at all those three beautiful guys. Biracial, Indian man, and then Chinese. And I would rather see a spin-off on this trio and just more positivity for Asian American representation. Like, I would see that. But please, next time when you write a script, do not try to cater to white people. I know it's a whole thing, like do not just cater to your own niche, then otherwise it would be just like South Asian people maybe watching your shows and everything. But then also do not cater to just white people. This show literally felt like a white person wrote it for us. It's like, it really said all those things what white people think about us to be true. Like this is not a show I would show to my white friends and be like, hey, this is a good and a kind of an understanding or glimpse into my culture. Oh, by the way, if you want to do that, watch Vidas for India on the same platform. Way better show. And yeah, so that's it for my episode of Thirsty Quarantine. And the rant is over. Subscribe, like, share. Also, apart from that, if you are actually interested in learning more about Indian culture, I have a bunch of videos on this channel that I would want you to see. This is a great segue. Thank you guys. This is Sylvie signing off.